Think about your favorite movie, black and white, color, action, whatever it may be. There's always a star, but more importantly, there's the co-stars. The co-stars support the stars, the supporting cast help make the movie. I think side items, side dishes help make a meal, and your questions have been pretty specific. You need some side item ideas. So the co-stars to your ham or maybe your turkey for Thanksgiving, that's what we're working on. And we've got a sweet and sour green bean dish. I think you're going to like it. It's very refreshing, especially on that heavy dinner table, and we've got it coming up on Culinary Nunnsense. I kind of feel like I'm at the Oscars here, and we've already moved by the stars of the show, and now we're talking about the supporting cast, the co-stars, and the best ones. And I think this is one of the best side dishes. Absolutely love it. I don't always save it for Thanksgiving. It's refreshing, it's crunchy, it's natural tasting, and more importantly, it's got this little sweet and sour thing going on to help refresh the palate. And you know that a lot of the items on that Thanksgiving table are going to be heavy. So this is a nice little break in between without having to resort to a salad. So let's go over the ingredients here real quick. It's going to start with the sweet and sour part. So the sweet and sour is made up right here. You've got some brown sugar, red wine vinegar, as well as some apple cider vinegar. You can also use some rice wine vinegar if you want it a little sweeter. You can also use just regular vinegar if you want a little bit more of the tart. As far as the herbs, it's really easy. We're going to use some fresh bay leaf. We're going to use some fresh thyme. And when it comes to cloves, and there are some cloves in this, and it's for aromatics, I always tell people, if you see a recipe, aside from maybe spiking a ham, that calls for 4 cloves, 5 cloves or more, cut it in half. 2 to 3 cloves almost for any recipe are going to work, and even smaller batches, that's where you can get away with even just 1 clove. So in this one, we'll go with 2 cloves, and that's going to be for the crunchy onion toppings that'll go on top of the green bean. But the first thing that we have to do to get ready for these green beans, after they've been trimmed and had the string pulled out, is we need to blanch these. And a few weeks ago, we were answering your questions on Culinary Nunnsense, and one of the questions was, hey, what's blanching? So let's go over it. In a pot here of salted boiling water, you want to add your fresh vegetables all the way in, let them sit. Now with the beans, we want sort of a crunchy, tender thing going on, so normally I would say 15 seconds to 30 seconds is plenty of time. Now with this, I'm going to let it go a little bit longer than the 30 seconds. 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. I want crunchy, tender, and the beans are thick and they've got a little bit of body to them, and I don't want them to be too wilted, so we'll watch this carefully. Now as they get ready to come out, let's go ahead and pull these out with the spider. I'm going to turn the heat off my water here and directly into the ice bath. I'm going to go back here and get a couple of the hot tub swimmers that didn't want to come out the first time. Into the ice bath real quick. I'm going to let these, as soon as you can grab them and you can feel that the heat is dissipating, these are done. You don't want them to swim around in the cold water because they'll end up getting waterlogged, and then you end up with soggy green beans anyway. Put these in a bowl, remove some pieces of ice in case you grab some, and then into a strainer and let the water evaporate off of the beans so that when we put the glaze on it, it has something to stick to. And it's time for us to work on the onions. Now the onions make up really the sweet and sour part of this dish. We'll do a little bit of the reinforcing on the sweet with the green beans, but this real easy. Just take an onion. I prefer the sweet one, so we're using a Valdelia. Thin slices all the way across. Try to keep everything even so that they cook relatively fast and also at the same time. Now the sweet and sour part, this is how we'll do it here. You've got red wine vinegar and you've got apple cider vinegar. That's the sour. Now we need some sweet. How about some brown sugar? And we want something that has that background flavor, so some herbs that work well. My favorite for this is bay leaf. A nice fresh bay leaf goes in, some thyme, and as we talked about, just a couple of cloves. I'm going to give this a quick stir to get those herbs down in the bottom. And you know what? Since we're here, let's go ahead and add the extra onion. Once it starts to simmer, put the lid on it. Let it simmer for about another 4, 5, maybe 10 minutes tops, depending on how many onions you put in. And what you want to do, pull them out every once in a while and bite into them. You want just a little bit of crunch there, but you'll see how that sweet and sour starts to pick up even inside the onion. Turning our attention to the bean now. In our bowl, we've got olive oil, extra virgin, as well as some maple syrup. And I know you're thinking, all right, that's a little weird. Well, we're even going to weird it up a little bit more. We've also got some fresh thyme. We're going to hit it with a little bit of salt and some pepper. After all, this is still got to be savory because we're doing it for dinner. Once again, a quick mix, and there we go. Our glaze is ready. It's already starting to get nice and thick because of the maple syrup, and it's also got a really nice light taste because it's not completely overpoweringly sweet. The olive oil cuts back on that. All right, so in go our beans into our bowl, and less is more on this one. You can always add more. It's hard to take it back once it's in. So we're going to start off with just a little drizzle here of the glaze. And we'll take our tongs give this a toss, and you'll see how it sticks to the bean. And if the bean was just pulled out of the blanching process, if it was still wet, in other words, what you would have is, well, a mess. The glaze wouldn't stick to the bean, but in this case, now that they're dried out a little bit from sitting in the colander, we got a nice sticky glaze going on. And how do we know? We're going to taste along the way. I might add just a little bit more. All right, let's plate it. And plating for this couldn't be easier. We're going to take our beans right to a platter, onto the platter. And you'll notice that some of the glaze dropped down to the bottom of the bowl. I'm going to reserve that just for a little topping here, maybe even a little decoration on the outside of the plate. From the beans that are now basically sweet, let's get the sour part, and that's going to be the onions. You don't want a lot of the liquid. As a matter of fact, you could even drain these and have it work. But since this dish is, I think, best served around room temperature, what we're going to do here is I'm going to take some of these onions right onto the top. Let's get our bay leaf out of the way there. Kind of scatter those about, and already you can smell the mix. You can smell the maple coming out from the heat of the onion, and you can smell definitely the sour from some of those, from the vinegar. There you go, just a little bit of glazing on the plate. And if that wasn't good enough already, I'm just going to take just a few cashews. And there you go, you got your green bean dish, a little crunch from the cashew, and you've got the sweet and sour thing going on. The sweet glaze on the bean, you've got the sour with the onions, kind of gives a little kimchi type of flavor, as well as the crunch from the cashews. I love this dish, like I said, at room temperature. So here's what I want you to do, maybe even a week before Thanksgiving. Experiment with the dish, see if you maybe want to add a little bit of heat, maybe some garlic. Ginger is also fantastic in this dish. That's where you get to put in some of your culinary nonsense. And I think when you blanch your beans, you add some sweet and sour, maybe that extra little something special from your pantry. You too will say, when it comes to green beans, sweet and sour, and a side dish, no, a co-star to your turkey, there is none better.